So let's talk about placeholder content. So when we go to, before we actually start making our wireframe, we're going to need some images and such to put inside of such wireframe, our mock-up, if you will, so that, it can be at least a semi-close visualization of what our final outcome will be. So that being said, you're going to need some content, right? And it's kind of annoying if you, most of the time when you are working, if you're working a web designer or also a graphic designer, more often than not, you will not have the final images or the final text. So what you need to do is have placeholders. So in our case, I'm just going to show you a couple of different options. So this is something that was AI generated that I punched in. You guys can try it out in a little bit. I will show you how to do that. So first off, as far as your text is concerned, a really handy tool is to use Lorem Ipsum. Lorem Ipsum is basically a dummy text generator. It has a long and robust history. So if you go to lipsum.com, I just have a link right here. You can click on it. It'll tell you how it came to be, why we use it, so on and so forth. You can tell how many paragraphs you want, and then it will generate basically dummy text. And what you can do is just copy and paste this into your into where you have text, and then you can use this as basically a guide, a way of creating dummy text. So this is the most historical one. This is one you're going to see very often. Some programs actually even have Lorem Ipsum built into them, but this is a real easy way to do it. I also have this other option here if you want to use it, because I think it's fun. Why not have fun while we're doing things? If you go in here, there's a bunch of different Lorem Ipsum. No thanks, I'm good. A bunch of Lorem Ipsum alternatives. So this one's got one that's based on niche. They have one that's based off of Office. So it's like hard stop, execute, great plan. Let me diarize this. And we synchronize ourselves at a later time point. Yet it's not solutionized this right now. So you can see like it sort of doesn't make sense, but it sort of has a weird sort of makes sense. So they have a Neil deGrasse Titan one, I guess. Or Khalid, however you say his name. DeLorean. I don't know that one. There's Obama. But yeah, I mean, I want to see. So it's Rick and Morty, if that's one you want to do. Pirates one. There was one that was I had seen before. I don't know if it's in here, where they had one for Snoop Dogg, and it just put like Izzle on all the words. That was really great. So here's a cat one. It'll make cat Lorem Ipsum. What do they have? So there's a bunch of them. So just go ahead and feel free, and you can look up other ones. I'm sure there's more than what you see here. But it's a way of basically just generating dummy text, and that's what I suggest doing when you do this. Don't try to write in the actual text, because it'll just take more time than what is necessary. Okay, so it's a really handy tool both for web design, but also for graphic design. In fact, actually, if you go to my website and you go to the front page, I never replaced it. This is Lorem Ipsum. This is what I stuck in there as a placeholder, and I never changed it. So even I use it, and this is not good. You shouldn't do that. Anyway, so besides text, you're going to need stock images or images in general. So for that content, I just have these two. There's a lot of other places to get them as well. My favorite one is Unsplash. So if you go to Unsplash, basically you can type in what you're looking for. So I'm just going to type in like traffic cone. Okay. Now it used to be like the whole thing was entirely free. Now that is not the case. So you see a lot of these you have to buy the rights to using. However, if you go up to license, and you just go to free, it will only show you the free ones. And then from here, you can utilize these images. You'll just notice that when you select them, and this is useful also for graphic design. So when I do graphic design work, so I'm like ads for people sometimes, I generally use Unsplash. The quality is usually really good. It's particularly useful if you're trying to do like background things. I wouldn't use it as like foreground items. But if you're trying to get like just a general brick wall or a ground or something like that, or leaves falling, there's a lot of stuff like that that's pretty good for in here. But when you select it, you just need to, it'll tell you to download it. I'll just click download for free. It should pop up. There it goes. And then it'll say to get how to give them credit. Okay, so just make sure, particularly if you're using this on the internet, that you make sure that you give credit to whoever was that. But more than likely, you wouldn't be using this. for your final product. But the nice thing is, if you do choose free, a lot of people will use stock imagery. Okay, and if it's nice stock imagery, especially if it's one that you paid for, it's gonna be less likely to be like super used all over the place. Like some of these ones might, there are probably a bunch of places that are using them because they're free. It's nicer if you're making something that's a product for an actual customer. I would pay for the stock imagery, but as far as we're concerned in this class, I wouldn't bother. But if you get good stock images and you have the license either for free or for paid, you could just leave those in there and don't even worry about having them as placeholders, unless you have something that's a little more nuanced and more specific to what you're creating. That's obviously preferred, especially if the client gives you photos. So anyway, you can grab some on here as well. And then the last option, and this is sort of the new hotness, if you will, is to use AI. So some of you, I believe, have already been using AI to generate some of your code. Don't do that, because the whole point is to learn how to do it, not how to type it in, because it might make mistakes. There's a lot of reasons why generating AI images and text is not great, but it's okay to use as placeholder things. So there's two main things I would say about the reason why not to use AI. One is the quality, legitimacy, and accuracy of what you're getting could be an issue. So it will often just make things up that aren't true. And so if you're relying on it, especially for something factual, then it could be wrong. The quality can be poor at times, and it can have a certain style to it that's pretty obvious. And it's a generic one, so it might not. They do have options on how to have it respond more conversationally or professionally, but it might be, if you have something that's a highly stylized or specific to a client, right, it might not be on brand. So it's not good for that. There's also security risk, because anything that you put into AI, it's then learning from. So if you put something in there, particularly if you're like doing programming stuff and you're developing technologies, like big companies like Google, they have Gemini, right? They're not, even though they try to sell it to other businesses, their engineers are not allowed to use it because they don't want to put their intellectual property into that system, because then theoretically somebody else can get it out. There's also like security thing. Like if you write your address in there, it's permanently in there, that somebody else could grab, if they can get the right prompt out of it. So just be aware. Also, when you put stuff in, when you hand stuff in, I don't know if you already know this, but when you have stuff generated by AI, if your professor or your boss takes what you gave them and puts it into AI, it will tell them whether it generated it and when it generated it. So just be aware that it's not as foolproof as you might think it is. Just want you to know. And the other major issue is copyright. So whenever you make anything, it's innately copywritten. Once you make it, as long as you're not stealing it from somebody, like you just copied somebody else's work. But if it's an original piece of work by you, written, visual, sonic, however it is, it's yours. Like you created that. It's innately yours because you're a human. When you have stuff generated by AI, it's not yours. So if you try to have AI generate you a logo and you use that logo, you don't own the copyright to it because you didn't actually make it. Now you could lie and say that you did and yada, yada, yada. But if it's found out that is not the case, there's just legal issues with it. So you can use it as part of your discovery process, how you're producing things, but it's generally not a good idea for a lot of reasons. Anyway, that being said, it's fun to do. So let's go ahead and I'll just show you some of these things. So these are a bunch of different options. I kind of like the regular Copilot one just because it's easy. You don't have to do anything special. Like the other ones, you usually have to make accounts and things like that. Google's actually not bad because you already have a Google account, I'm sure. But if you are on Windows, you could literally just click on this Copilot, the Copilot button down here. This is, I think, Windows 11. And then you just start typing in stuff. So, like here, I just wrote make an image. So you just have to make sure you tell it if you want to make an image, and then just say what you want it to be. But you could do things like, watch, create a website about traffic cones. And then look, see, it made this code here. But I can tell when you guys do this, so don't do that. Okay. So you can tell to make an image. You can also just give it some prompts and it will create text for you as well. The only thing I will say when you go to use these, and most of them are this way, um, both this one as well as the others, is that you will have a certain number of tokens. So I think it's 14 right now is what I think it is for Copilot. Actually, I don't think it's even through Copilot because it's actually, this is Dolly. Um, but if you don't have Windows and you're on a Mac, you can just go to the web browser, type in bing.com, and then you'll see a Copilot button right here. And then bam, it's the same thing that you would get by clicking on this button. So you don't have to have Windows in order to utilize it. And then you just type in what you need, and it will create images for you. It will create text for you. You just have to give it some prompts. Sometimes it will ask other questions just to try and make it a little bit closer, make sure that it's what you're after. So just be aware. I don't have a big problem with you utilizing AI for the text and images as far as the content is concerned, at least initially. But you know, like I said, your final product should not contain that, and I certainly don't want it writing your code. It's not a terrible idea to use it to put into. You could put your code into AI, and then it would theoretically help you maybe try to find the errors. I don't have a huge issue with that because it's trying to help you. Although you should try to do it yourself because you will learn more trying to solve it on your own, trying to debug it, than just having it give you the answer. Because then you've done no work, you've had no struggle, and you won't learn anything. The more you struggle, the more you actually learn things. So anyway, those are some options. So what you're going to want to do is I've already done a bunch of this so that I can do when I go to do the wireframe, but you should just go and either grab stock images, or if you have pictures yourself already, just try to gather your images and dummy text so that you're ready to do the wireframe.